Alright, listen close because this isn't some spooky tourist trap story they sell at gas stations. Have you ever been somewhere you just knew you shouldn't be? Not just trespassing, but somewhere that felt ancient, forbidden, like the very air was warning you to turn back? And have you ever ignored that feeling, pushed past the warnings, thinking you knew better? Yeah, well, out in the Navajo Nation in Arizona, some places aren't just off limits. They're doors. And if you open the wrong door, even by just a crack, you might find yourself on the other side where no one can see or hear you anymore. And trust me, that silence, it's the deadliest sound of all. This happened out in the Navajo Nation, specifically in a remote area not far from Canyon de Chelly National Monument. Imagine vast, open landscapes, red rock mesas rising like ancient monuments against a turquoise sky, the air dry and thin, the silence broken only by the whisper of the wind. It's a place of immense beauty, but also a place that carries a weight, a history that goes back centuries, millennia. It's tribal land, sovereign land, and for good reason. It's not just scenery, it's sacred. Our story centers around 4 tourists, typical American road trippers, full of energy and entitlement, thinking they could experience authentic Native American culture in a weekend. There was Chad, the self-proclaimed leader, always filming everything on his GoPro, convinced he was a travel vlogger in the making. His girlfriend, Brittany, glued to her phone, more interested in Instagram filters than actual landscapes. Then there were their friends, Kevin and Jessica, a couple who were constantly bickering, their relationship drama playing out against the backdrop of ancient, silent beauty. Meh. I was just a park ranger, Ranger Williams, trying to keep these kinds of folks from doing something stupid, which out here could be very, very stupid. The special, unusual feature of this place wasn't just the landscape, it was the energy. You could feel it if you were paying attention. A sense of ancient power, of spirits lingering, of boundaries that shouldn't be crossed. The Navajo people are incredibly respectful of their land, of the Dainbaikia, and they have reasons for that respect, reasons that go far beyond simple politeness. There are places you don't go, things you don't touch, rituals you don't mimic. It's not about being unwelcoming, it's about survival. It's about respecting forces you don't understand and can't control. And that's what I tried to tell them. Chad, Brittany, Kevin, and Jessica. They'd wandered off trail, ignoring the signs, venturing into a restricted area marked clearly with Navajo Nation warnings, Dainbaikia, do not enter sacred land. I intercepted them near a small, crumbling cliff dwelling, a place that felt colder somehow even in the Arizona sun. Hey folks, you're in a restricted area, I said, my voice calm but firm. This area is closed to visitors. You need to head back to the marked trail. Chad naturally was the one who spoke up, GoPro still rolling. Relax, Ranger, he said, flashing a disarming but ultimately arrogant smile. We're just exploring. Trying to get off the beaten path, you know? See the real stuff. He emphasized real, with a condescending air that grated on my nerves. This is the real stuff, I said, gesturing to the ancient dwelling. And it's sacred. It's not a tourist attraction. There are reasons these areas are restricted. Please turn around and go back. Brittany finally looked up from her phone, her expression bored. Sacred to who? She drawled. Like ghosts and stuff? She giggled and Kevin and Jessica joined in, a nervous, dismissive laughter. It's about respect, I said, trying to keep my patience. Respect for the land, respect for the culture. These are not just empty ruins. These are places of power, places that need to be left undisturbed. Chad just smirked. Power, huh? What kind of power? Tourist attracting power? He winked at Brittany, who rolled her eyes but secretly enjoyed his bravado. I sighed, knowing I wasn't getting through to them. Look, I said, pointing to a hand-painted sign, faded but still legible, near the cliff dwelling. It was in Navajo and English. It says right there, do not disturb, spirits watch. These aren't just words. These are warnings. For your own safety, please leave this area now. Kevin, always the contrarian, scoffed. Spirits watch? Seriously? You actually believe in that stuff, Ranger? It's not about belief, I said, my voice hardening. It's about respecting boundaries. And this is a boundary you're crossing. Now, are you going to turn around or am I going to have to escort you out? They finally relented, grumbling and rolling their eyes, but they turned back towards the marked trail. I watched them go, a knot of unease tightening in my stomach. They were the type, the kind who thought rules were for other people, warnings were for the gullible. I had a bad feeling about them. A very bad feeling. The inciting incident happened the next day. I got a call from tribal police. A report of trespassing, vandalism at a remote, highly sensitive site deep within the restricted zone. The description of the vehicle, the clothing, it matched Chad, Brittany, Kevin, and Jessica. My heart sank. They hadn't listened. They had gone back. I met the tribal police officer, Officer Yazzie, at the site. It was a small hidden cave, tucked away in a narrow canyon, a place not even marked on most maps. The air here was heavy, still, almost suffocating. Even the desert sun seemed to dim in this shadowed canyon. And the silence, it was profound, unsettling. The vandalism was minor, spray-painted graffiti on the cave wall. Their names, their stupid hashtags, the usual tourist garbage. But that wasn't the worst of it. Inside the cave, in a small alcove, there was evidence of disturbance. And something was missing. A mask, Officer Yazzie said, his voice grim, his face etched with worry. A ceremonial mask. It was kept here. For protection. Now it's gone. He showed me a small, empty niche in the rock wall, dust swirling in the air where something had been recently removed. This mask, Yazzie continued, it's not just an object. It's a guardian. A protector of this place. Taking it, it's a very bad thing. Who would take something like that? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Yazzie just shook his head, his gaze distant, troubled. Tourists, he said, the word laced with weariness and a hint of anger. Always tourists. They don't understand. They think it's just a souvenir. They don't know what they've done. The rising tension started subtly, almost imperceptibly, like the desert heat haze shimmering on the horizon. We put out an APB on the tourist's vehicle, started a search, but it was like they had vanished into thin air. No trace, no sightings, nothing. It was as if they had driven off the face of the earth. Then the reports started coming in. Strange reports, unsettling reports. From other tourists, from locals, from people who had been near the restricted zone, but not inside it. Reports of seeing things, or rather, not seeing things. People talking about figures in the landscape, people who seemed to be there but weren't. People who walked right through them like ghosts. People who called out, but received no response, as if they were speaking into a void. At first, we dismissed them as heat stroke, desert hallucinations, mass hysteria fueled by local legends. But the reports kept coming, more and more frequent, more and more detailed. And they all shared a common thread. Unseen figures, unheard voices, a sense of emptiness where people should be. I started to feel it myself. A subtle shift in perception, a sense that something was missing. Walking through the park, I'd catch glimpses of movement in my peripheral vision, shadows that flickered and danced, but when I turned to look directly, there was nothing there. I'd hear faint sounds, whispers on the wind, voices calling my name, but when I listened closely, there was only silence. The air felt thinner, somehow less substantial. Colors seemed muted, the vibrant desert landscape losing its vibrancy, becoming washed out, almost transparent. It was like the world was fading around me, losing its definition, its solidity. Officer Yazzie and I went back to the cave, to the site where the mask had been stolen. The air was even heavier here, the silence even more profound. And the sense of absence, it was overwhelming. It felt like something had been ripped away, leaving a hole in reality. Yazzie performed a small ceremony, a traditional Navajo blessing, trying to appease the spirits, trying to mend the tear in the fabric of the world. He burned sage, chanted ancient prayers, offered tobacco to the earth. But it felt weak, insufficient, like trying to patch a dam with a band-aid. It's not enough, Yazzie said, his voice grave, shaking his head slowly. The mask, it was more than just a protector. It was a balance. It kept things in place. Without it, he trailed off, his gaze fixed on the distant mesas, his expression filled with dread. Without it, what? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Without it, Yazzie said, the veil thins. The spirits, they can reach through. And those who took it, they're already on the other side. The climax came during a sudden desert storm. The sky turned black, lightning cracked across the mesas, thunder echoed through the canyons, and the rain poured down in sheets, turning the dry washes into raging torrents. It was a violent, elemental storm, mirroring the chaos that was being unleashed in the spiritual realm. I was caught out in the storm, patrolling a remote section of the park when it hit. Visibility dropped to near zero, the wind howled like a banshee, and the rain stung my face like needles. I sought shelter in a small alcove beneath an overhanging rock, waiting for the worst of it to pass. And that's when I saw them. Flickering at the edge of my vision through the driving rain were figures. Humanoid shapes, indistinct, translucent, shimmering like heat haze in the downpour. They were moving towards me, slowly, deliberately, emerging from the storm-racked landscape. Chad, Brittany, Kevin, and Jessica. It was them. But not them. They were different. Pale, gaunt, their eyes hollow sockets, their bodies flickering in and out of visibility like half-formed ghosts. They moved with a jerky, unnatural gait, their limbs disjointed, their movements unsettlingly silent, despite the roar of the storm. They surrounded my alcove, their translucent forms blocking out the rain, their silent presence pressing down on me, suffocating me with a cold, ethereal dread. They reached out towards me, their hands like skeletal claws, their touch promising not pain but erasure. Oblivion. Terror, raw and primal, gripped me. This wasn't just a hallucination. This was real. They were real. Or unreal. Erased from our reality, existing now in some liminal space, caught between worlds, hunted by the spirits they had angered, and now, seeking to drag me down with them. The twist wasn't just about the mask or the spirits or the tourists' foolishness. It was about silence. As the translucent figures closed in, as their icy touch brushed against my skin, as the storm raged around us, I understood the true horror of their fate. It wasn't just that they were unseen, unheard by the living world. It was that they were trapped in a realm of silence. A silence so profound, so absolute, it was consuming them, stripping away their essence, their identity, their very being. The mask hadn't just been a protector. It had been a filter, a barrier, holding back the silence, keeping the two worlds separate. By stealing it, they hadn't just angered spirits. They had shattered the barrier. They had opened a door to a void of silence, and they had walked through it. And now, that silence was reaching out, seeking to claim more victims, seeking to expand its dominion. The silence of the stolen mask wasn't just the absence of sound. It was the absence of everything. The absence of connection, of communication, of reality itself. It was the ultimate isolation, the ultimate erasure. And it was contagious. I don't know how I escaped. Adrenaline, instinct, maybe some small measure of luck. I scrambled out of the alcove, pushed past the translucent figures, ran blindly into the storm, stumbling through the rain-soaked landscape, desperate to get away, to break free from their silent, spectral grasp. I collapsed near my patrol vehicle, soaked to the bone, shivering uncontrollably but alive. Officer Yazzie found me later, guided by my radio signal. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of relief and grim understanding. He knew. He knew what I had seen, what I had faced. The search for Chad, Brittany, Kevin, and Jessica was officially called off. Presumed lost in the storm, the report said. Tragic accident. But we both knew the truth. They weren't lost in the storm. They were lost to the silence. Erased. Unseen. Unheard. Forever trapped in the void they had created. And the mask? It was never recovered. Lost, stolen, or perhaps returned to where it belonged in the silence on the other side of the veil. We don't know. We can only hope. But even now, when I'm out in the park, especially in the remote areas, I still feel it. The silence. The subtle shift in perception. The feeling of being watched by unseen eyes. And sometimes, in the wind, I think I hear whispers. Faint, desperate whispers, carried on the breeze from those who are lost to the silence, those who defied the warnings, those who stole the mask and paid the ultimate price. Have you ever been somewhere truly silent? A silence that goes beyond the absence of sound, a silence that feels alive? Have you ever ignored a warning, dismissed a feeling in your gut, thinking you knew better? Share your experiences. Have you ever felt like you were becoming unseen, unheard? Because out here in the Navajo Nation, the silence isn't just empty. It's hungry. And sometimes, it steals more than just sound. It steals your very existence. And that's a silence you can never escape.